Well, it's the January version of Paul's Yard Walk and Talk. And it's about, this morning, it was 30 degrees on our back deck this morning. We've got clear skies, sun's coming up through the trees there. We've had typical winter temperatures for here, which is usually highs in the 40s day after day. That's pretty much a usual winter here. We had that really cold snap back in early December where we got close to setting some temperature records for that time of year. It was down to 20, maybe a little below 20, but lately it's been back to normal. The only thing unusual this year has been it's extremely dry. We're quite a ways behind in our precipitation this winter. We've had very little. Here at our house we've probably had less than an inch, probably like maybe a half inch total in the last 3 months of precipitation. And normally we'd get 5 to 8 inches in that time period, so we're quite a ways behind. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll get some more here this spring. But I thought today we'll do a little cleanup. It's a good time of the year to do some cleanup work. There's some stuff that can be cut back a little bit. Don't want to do too much trimming this time of year because I don't want to encourage new growth yet, because we're still going to get frost. We had frost last night. We're going to get frost again for the next couple of months, actually. So anyway, let's get started. Here's the Clematis. Some people say Clematis, some say Clematis. I usually say Clematis. I might say the other sometimes. It's a tomato thing. Either is acceptable. But anyway, there's two plants here, one on each side of this trellis. And as you can see, with the cold weather we had this winter, it killed all the leaves, which is typical. That's normal for this type. This one is one that can be cut back every year, and should be actually. So I'm going to go ahead and whack it back here so we can actually see the trellis again. It can be cut all the way to the ground. I probably won't do that. I'll probably leave 2 to 3 feet of stem here. And my reason for doing that is it gives the plant a little bit of a head start on the slugs at the start of the year. When the first leaves come out in the spring, that's about the time the slugs are at their worst, and they'll strip the plant overnight. If I let the leaves come off 2 or 3 feet above the ground, then it slows the slugs down a little bit. Gives me a chance to put some iron phosphate on the ground, and the plant gets a little bit of a head start, and it doesn't get set back quite so much by the slugs in the spring. So we're going to do that. So I'll put the camera down here for a little bit. Okay, and there we go. And you can see I left quite a bit there. In fact, I noticed there's even some new growth coming here. Of course, now that I say that, I don't see it, but there's actually some little green leaves that were actually starting to bud out on this thing. So I guess it was a good time for me to trim it back. And now you can see the arbor here too. Kathy and I put this arbor up when we first moved in here. We bought it online. It's kind of a nice arbor. We only get to see it for a few months of the year because the Clematis covers it up. This Clematis starts to really leaf out in the spring, and then it's at full. This is a summer blooming Clematis. It blooms midsummer, and then then it's covered with leaves, and then until now it's January, and I just cut it back. So now I'm going to get to look at it here for a few months, and it's not covered up. Excuse me. And then there's that pile of stuff there. That's my wheelbarrow. It's going to go over to the compost bin here. This goes down in the bottom of a compost bin. It takes all summer to break down. It's a little twiggy. I mean, it's not thick twigs, but it doesn't break down fast. And then I think I'm going to come out here with my little rake and get some leaves. The weeping Japanese maple bush there is still covered with its brown leaves from last fall, and here you can see there's some leaves that have fallen into this heather here. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, or the heather won't like that. Usually, most of our trees are conifers. We do have some deciduous. You know, this is a weeping tree here, has some leaves, and there's some alders. So out in the lawn, I get a few leaves, but I usually just leave them, and then in this, you know, in the next month or two, whenever I get around to, depending on the weather, I'll mow the lawn, and they'll get. I have a mulching lawnmower, and they'll get chopped up. If I had more leaves, I'd have to rake them because that would kill the grass. But here I don't get enough that it really matters much. It's just they get chopped up by the mower and go into mulch for the lawn. See if we got anything going on here. The Mexican oranges have some new blossoms there, and then this lighter green leaves there looks like new growth. So it's had some growth, a little growth spurt this fall. I don't know if there's anything else on this side that looks too exciting. I must not have had any deer lately because this plant actually has not chewed down to the ground. A couple of these plants here the deer really like. If they come through, they come through this wood patch here between the neighbor's house and our house, and as they come by, they like to nibble and graze. Apparently, they think my shrubs are a salad bar. So, but anyway, let's go empty. I'm going to go empty the comp. This is a Hellebore. We have a couple of them over here on the side. It's also called a Lenten rose because they frequently bloom during Lent. These are last year's leaves, which I will. I just stopped by here to check and see what was going on. These are last year's leaves. They will. I'll cut them off this spring or later when the new growth starts. I don't see any new growth there yet, though, so I'll leave them for now. But the new growth will come and it'll bloom on the new growth. I cut the old growth back and throw them away because they get this. They'll get. Well, I don't see it there now, but they'll get a black, kind of like a black spot. They'll start growing on the leaves, the old leaves. There's one there, and there should be. Okay, there's one here. Another one here. This is a Hellebore here. The native salal. I have to keep an eye on it. It wants to come over and cover this up, so I'll have to cut this back a little to keep the Hellebore alive. But it's the same condition. It looks like don't see any new growth yet. Still the old growth from last year. They're fairly slow-growing plants. They like an alkaline soil, so a little calcium or something on the soil around them is good. Here's the third one. They are slow growers. The plants are long-lived. They'll come back. Actually, there's some growth right there coming. They're slow growers. They're long-lived. Over time, if they survive, they'll gradually, every year, they'll get a bigger and bigger crop of leaves and stems. Same thing here. The salals coming in. I'll just trip that back a little bit. Yeah, so since they like alkaline soil, you wouldn't want to put them near an acid lover like rhododendrons or blueberries, azaleas, something like that likes acidic soil. The Pieris is starting to bud out a little bit here, a leaf blossom. It's going to have little flowers. The most impressive thing about it is, though, not the flowers, but in the spring, the new growth is red. And so you get new red leaves. There's actually 3 of them here. This middle one got stepped on by a deer, so it's a little behind the other 2. But it's going to have a good crop of flowers here pretty soon. They're a common landscaping shrub in our area. They're very hardy. They're solid as a rock. You can tell they're evergreen. They have a little bit of flowers in this early spring interest, and then they get the nice red leaves. They'll grow, I don't know, maybe 6 feet high. These are only a couple of feet here. These are fairly young. And then this is a native snowberry next to it, and there's the white snowberries, after which it's named. So it has a little winter interest. But I thought I'd point out the fact that that's actually got some, here we are early January, we got some flowers trying to come here. Oh, and then the same thing here. This is an Oregon grape, Mahonia. I have several Oregon grapes. This one blooms now, apparently. It's got nice yellow flowers. It'll get nice berries if it doesn't freeze them off. Flowers don't freeze off. The one here behind it doesn't have any flowers, but this one doing quite well. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flower pods like this. So there's another Mahonia, different kind here. This one gets yellowish leaves, and that's its interest. And then there's another one down there that I planted. It's a little bit reddish. I think it's the same variety as this. So there's different varieties. This is my summer plant. I forget what it is, but it gets really large leaves. And you can see what happened in December. The cold weather we had, the leaves froze. They're just laying on the ground. I'll clean those up later. But here in the middle, I got some young growth. So it actually came through pretty good. It looks like it's going to have another, as long as it doesn't get a hard freeze in February or something, we'll be okay. This is my hill of moss next to the driveway. It's like a moss garden. I suppose someday the sail owl will cover it up, but in the meantime, I like the moss. If you get close to it, it's like a little tiny miniature world almost. Hydrangeas. This is a big hydrangea here. What I'll do, I'm going to leave this for now. But the dead heads here, I'll trim them off in the spring when the new growth starts to make it look a little nicer. And I'm also take out, on plants you can usually take out up to about a third of the branches, but I'll definitely take out all the low ones. Hydrangeas, you can get more hydrangeas if you want by letting them grow along the ground like this and then putting a little dirt over them, and they'll root, and you can trim them off from the mother plant and you've got a new plant. But what I'll do here is I'll just trim these lower branches back, let the top ones come, and they get high and then they get heavy with their leaves and then they fall over, and it's a repeating cycle. Now this hydrangea over here, I don't know what the story is here. This guy, in the cold weather in December, it didn't lose its leaves. It was still green. You can see a number of the leaves here have frozen, and they're, kind of slimy. But there's still some here that look like they're still alive. I don't know why this one, I don't think it's an evergreen. I don't know that there's an evergreen hydrangea that we have. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it wants to be evergreen. But it's not a good, this is not a good location for it if it wants to be evergreen. But that one, I'll trim this one back. Oh, and then the other thing about hydrangeas is that they will, they'll bloom on last year's growth. So when you cut them back, you don't want to cut everything down to the ground. There's a couple of really nice hydrangeas next to a bank in Winslow and Bainbridge Island, and they haven't had any of these so-called blooms, mop heads, whatever you want to call them, for several years, because every winter the gardener person, landscape person, comes in there and cuts them all the way back. And my mother-in-law has tried to tell him that what will happen, and I guess he doesn't listen. I don't know. So next year they won't have any mop heads on their hydrangeas either. This is a different kind of hydrangea here. It has a different kind of, these aren't really flowers. The flowers are actually little tiny things that you can't see, but they're a leaf like that. I can't think of the name of it, but that plant that everybody buys in the store at Christmas time with the red leaves on top and the green leaves underneath. It's kind of like that. It's this is actually a leaf, not a flower, but it's very pretty. Hydrangeas aren't native here, as they don't really attract any wildlife. But I have a few of them along here because I like them, and they do block the view of my compost pile. So they like shade, they like it damp. They will tell you in the summertime when they need to be watered, the leaves will start to droop, and you give them a bucket of water and they'll perk right back up again within a day. So just kind of keep an eye on them, check them every couple of days, and don't give them any direct sun or very little direct sun, and they'll be happy. Well, I'm going to end it here. That's our show for today, this month, and we'll see. Well, stop back in next month for Paul's yard walk and talk and see what's happening. We'll see what's happening in February.